shootings, alleged and actual police brutality, civil unrest, loss of respect for authority, mass shootings, growing crime through our parts of our nation. Like it or not, this is our world. Do you desire to have a better understanding of all of this? Would you like to learn the skills and mindset that helped me throughout my over 20-year law enforcement career? Would you like to acquire the tools to protect yourself and your loved ones in these dangerous times? If you answered yes to any of these, then Code Red Conversations, where we seek to understand and apply the tactical mind, is what you've been looking for. So what are you waiting for? Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and prepare to join the conversation. What is going on, y'all? How's everyone doing today? I hope everyone is well, enjoying this. Make sure you comment down below if you are having any issue, any audio issue seeing me. I just want to make sure everything's going well because I tried a little something different with my intro, so I wanted to make sure everything was good there. So feel free to comment. Let me make sure I have those up. Yes. So today's discussion is probably going to be one of the more controversial discussions that we have, where there may be more disagreement. I don't know. I'm not 100% sure, but where everyone stands in the area of when it comes down to the topic of the day, critiquing the police, open critique, a yay or nay, whether you stand for it, whether you support it, whether you're against it or not. Maybe it depends on the context of when it goes down. I don't know. I don't know what your individual thoughts may be in that area. But I know that in light of what I have posted up here, let me make this a larger screen. I know in light of the recent video that I posted, this one here, in regarding this, let me go to my share my YouTube channel, as a matter of fact. Let me remove this, pull up my YouTube channel so we can address exactly what we're talking about here. So I can show you exactly what I'm talking about. I don't know if y'all can see this right here. Pretty sure you can. But this video right here, shootout. Let me go to the main page. Shootout, woman versus cop. Ex-cop reacts. This video sparked a pretty passionate and sometimes heated discussion amongst the viewers. I had some people who, and I'm not going to get into this aspect of it. This may be another conversation for another day. But I had some people who tried to claim that the lady involved was a victim, merely a victim of the current social issues, the current unrest, and she wasn't to blame because she was afraid. But like I said, that's a discussion for another day. But I also had people on the other side who were upset at me, who were bothered by the fact that I openly critiqued law enforcement officers. There were some people that actually thought I was in the wrong for making an open critique, and who say that, and then you had others on a more extreme side who thought that people that they're never in a right, that there's never a case to openly critique a law enforcement officer because you aren't there. You weren't there at the scene to determine why he or she made the decisions that they made. So I want to get into that. I really would like to get into that today and really address this issue and talk about it. So I would love to know what you folks think. All y'all that are out there watching, I would love to know what you think in the area of critiquing the police. Do you think it's a good thing? Do you think it's a negative thing? Put some comments down. Put some comments, and then so I can interact with them. Clearly, if anyone is familiar with my YouTube channel, Code Red Conversations, and if you're not, and if you're just stopping by, maybe you saw this on Instagram and you're curious as to the conversation. The purpose of Code Red Conversations is primarily to be a light, to let people, to help the average everyday citizen, one, understand the decision-making process that an officer goes through in a police use of force, and to also help the average citizen better understand the threat perception that an officer may perceive during a violent encounter or potentially violent encounter. Because today, oftentimes you hear people critiquing cops who have no understanding of what they're dealing with, none whatsoever. They see a shooting, they see a use of force, and just because to them it seems wrong, they automatically think that the officer was wrong. So what I do with Code Red Conversations, I try to just offer some additional information just to help people understand why cops do the things that they do. And then secondly, and equally as important, when I see a use of force, whether it's a good or bad one, I try to break it down, because my background is 20 years in law enforcement, from working the prison systems in the state of Indiana at a maximum security prison, to the county jail here in Las Vegas, and patrolling the streets in Vegas, defensive tactics, firearms, active shooter response instructor, gang officer. I can go on and on. Crisis intervention team officer. I can go on. And I don't say all that to brag, but just to let people know that I wasn't just some dude who just happened to have an interest in law enforcement tactics and began talking about it. I actually come from a position where not only did I do the job, but I also trained other officers in how to do aspects of the job better. So another main purpose of Code Red Conversations is a training tool, is to assist other officers in their decision making, perhaps to, in the long term, be able to make better decisions if we can openly and honestly have these discussions about, man, that was a good tactic right there, or no, that was a terrible tactic, and here's what that officer could have done better. So in light of all that, what I'd like to say is, first and foremost, if you're familiar with my channel at all, you know where I stand on the issue of critiquing law enforcement. There are many a video where I point out the problems of in a particular police use of force, or in the officer's poor physical condition, or in his lack of skill. And I think that's a good thing, because I truly believe that is the best way that we can learn and grow as individuals. I love referencing the Operation Eagle Claw. I wonder if anyone's familiar with Operation Eagle Claw out there. If you are, comment below and let me know how you heard of it. But let me go into a little detail for those of you that don't know. I'm not gonna go. Let me wipe my screen down. I got a little something on there. For those of you that are unfamiliar with it, a real simple breakdown was, it was during the Iran hostage crisis in 1980. I believe it was 79 to 80, where a team of United States special operators attempted to conduct a hostage rescue, and it went horribly wrong. You had Green Berets, Delta Force. I'm not sure if there were any Navy SEALs involved, but you definitely had Green Berets and Delta Force. And they were going to try to make entry and get these hostages and get out of there. And I watched a documentary a few years ago that where they spoke to some of the surviving operators. And one thing that was consistent was that there was a consistent theme of overconfidence. And let me show you a video where that demonstrates exactly that. Let me share with you this video here real quick that discusses that point. I think this one is it. Let's see. Yep. Fire this video up here. And this should help you understand a little bit. I'm going to show you this video, and then I'm going to go into more detail as to my perspective when it comes to critiquing other law enforcement officers, why I feel so passionately about that topic. Make my big old mug a little smaller here. Here we go.
We had to try, and we did, and we failed. It would be 8 more months before Iran finally released the hostages. We'll never know if Delta Force could have rescued them had they made it to the embassy. All we know is that 4 secret agents, shown here with President Carter, had cased the embassy, and one of them radioed back. It would be a piece of cake. Those were his exact words, piece of cake.
All right. Now, let's back that out. Now, I also saw a video where one operator said that you had, considering the fact that you had so many elite operators, elite soldiers, Green Berets who had combat time, Delta operators, there was an air, there was a sense that they were overconfident, and they went in there and then they had all types of problems, some of them outside of their hands, some of them having to deal with the factor of the weather and things like that. But their overconfidence put them in a position to where they ultimately failed the operation. But in the big picture, it ended up being a blessing in disguise, because I've heard people who were involved in that operation say that as a result of being humbled to the level that they were, they grew, and that the special operations as a whole, I'm talking about all levels of special operations, as far as all forces, regardless of branch, learned from it. And so I think that critique is one of the best ways that we can learn as individuals, as officers. And when we sit back at times and we say, if we get involved in a high-risk encounter and then it ends up a right to struggle, I see your comment. I'm about to put it up here, and I'm not ignoring it. I just want to try to get my point in. So I appreciate you chiming in. But when I've been on calls where it was a bank robbery, or we're looking for a wanted suspect, and bad tactics are used. And then if we had a debriefing later on at the end of the shift, there were times, and not always, but there were definitely times where I heard individuals say, "Oh, you know what? Don't worry about it. Don't focus so much on what we did wrong. Let's just be glad that everything went right, and let's just celebrate that." And I was always like, "No, to me that's just to me that's not good enough. It's not good enough. Just because things went okay this time doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to go right the next time. And if we aren't willing to look at ourselves, examine ourselves, to be able to see what we did right, what we did wrong, where we can improve, then we're just blowing smoke, and we have a false sense of security." That's my perspective. Let me check out some of the comments here. Cops should critique other cops, but not publicly. Now, Struggle, if you can go into detail and say why you think it shouldn't be public. Why you think it shouldn't be public? My mindset is that we are public servants. And if we choose to hide our own misgivings, our own failures, our own shortcomings, I think that, and I had this conversation with someone earlier on Instagram. I'm not sure if it was you. Maybe you go by a different name or not. I'm not sure. But I had a similar conversation earlier with someone on Instagram. And my mindset is it can appear as if we are elitist. And I think that if we act as if we can't be honest about our own shortcomings, our own failures, our own mistakes. I think that's a dangerous place to be as those who are deemed to protect and serve, as those who are public servants. That's my perspective. Let me see here. Kenneth Purnell. I think it's good for current and former officers to critique other cops. One positive is that it gives us common people an inside perspective on the mentality that went into the decisions. Now, Kenneth, I pretty much agree 100% with your comment. I think that there's so much good that comes as a result of that. One, it humanizes the officer because, let's be honest, any one of us here, anybody who's had any contact with law enforcement, we know that there are some, and once again, let me get rid of this screen share here, taking up space here. My big head does enough of that. But I think that we all know that there's some cops out there who just think that their stuff don't stink, like they just can't do any wrong. And no matter what, and who are never willing to apologize, who are never willing to say, hey, you know what, I might have screwed up, my bad, that's on me. So I think that it's a good thing to humanize officers more, especially in this climate where there's so much hatred and anti-cop rhetoric. Now, I do understand that there's another argument where people say, well, because of that, we shouldn't give the other side any ammunition. But I think that's kind of a short-sighted perspective on the whole conversation. Because society is always looking for a vehicle for social conflict. Critique should happen internally among people who understand law enforcement. Good point. So should we keep the average citizen ignorant of law enforcement by not letting them in on some of our internal discussions? Or should we open up the discussion, perhaps broaden a few eyes and ears and minds so that they better understand the things that we deal with, so that they better understand the things that we wrestle with on a daily basis? I think that I definitely understand that your perspective on that, but I think overall, the big picture, I think that's a little short-sighted view. And I think that there are some out there who like to, I think the vocal minority is what's being heard the most these days. I think the vocal minority, I think the average everyday citizen loves cops, or at the very least appreciates the work that officers do. They appreciate it. I know that when I worked in the jail and when I worked in the prison, you never heard anyone say, hey, thanks for the work that you do. Or if it happened, it was on such a rare occasion that I can't even remember. And that was the bulk of my law enforcement career, was in corrections. But on the streets, it was pretty regularly where I heard people say, hey, officer, I just want to say thank you for protecting us if we were on a special event, or thank you for doing what you do if I was eating at a restaurant. It didn't happen every day, but it happened a few times a week. I would say every week, even working in the hood, where that may be shocking to a lot of people, but that was a pretty common occurrence. So I don't know. I think that, like I said, I understand people who have a different perspective on this matter, but I think in the much broader picture, I think educating the general public, helping them understand what it is that we do, the challenges that we face, will go much further. There are always going to be haters, and those people, yeah, you can't do nothing about it. And then here's another thing when it comes down to, I had in the conversation I had earlier today, the individual I was speaking with referenced the fact that it could be used against an officer in a court of law. And that could be, but typically the majority, what we hear from people, what's used in the court is someone who might be considered an expert witness, someone who might be in a position to where they may actually be brought in by one member, whether it's the plaintiff or whomever, the defense. to make their case. I don't think they're going to take a random YouTube video and put it on the internet and talk about it. And even if they did, or a random internet video and take it into court, and even if they did, you still have to address the reasonable officer standard and all this kind of stuff. That needs to be hashed out in court legally. One comment, because I've seen cops who made references on different shootings or uses of force, and I thought they were totally wrong. I thought they were totally wrong, and I thought that their perspective was totally off. So, so I think the credibility of the individual and their knowledge on that particular topic goes a long way. Goes a long way. And here's another point. Like, let's take this for instance. Well, let me pull up this this right here. All critique is welcome, but critiquing the professional while ignorant of the profession is suspect. I totally agree with that. And that's one of the main reasons why I created Code Red Conversations. I don't critique my doctor because I have limited knowledge of medicine. Now that's a problem because doctors don't know everything. I have a limited knowledge of medicine, but I have some knowledge of medicine. And there have been times where I was in my doctor's office and I challenged my doctor on his diagnosis, and he was wrong. He was completely wrong. I can go into some details, but I don't feel like giving up my medical history on this video. But there have been more than one occasion where I challenged my doctor on his diagnosis or his remedy, and I was totally on point, and even he had to apologize. So just because someone is knowledgeable in a particular area doesn't mean that they know everything, and it doesn't mean that they're above critique. I agree with the first half of what you said, but that second half, I've had too many situations in my life where I could not jive with that one bit, and it benefited me in the long term. And you're talking about dealing with my health. Thanks, Nita. Yeah, this things we talked about way back in the day, girl. You know that we talked about stuff like this way back in the day. I think that was part of the reason, one of the many reasons we got along so well. So yeah, and go even, and I don't want to go off on a rant here, too much of a rant, but when you're talking about a doctor, doctors could give you help or information on nutrition, let's say. But the average everyday doctor, how much training do they actually have on nutrition? I've spoken to some doctors who literally told me that in all of their time in med school, they had about 3 or 4 days of nutrition training. But yet because what they do is they write prescriptions, and they, some are surgeons, and that's their area of expertise. Like I said, I'm not trying to dog them and just say that they're ignorant, but not everyone is. Not just because someone has a title doesn't mean that they know everything in a particular field. When I was a CO coming out to the streets, there were some cops. I had way more of a background, way more knowledge in the area of gangs, for instance, than 99% of the other officers on the streets. Now, these guys came in contact with gang members every single day. But the fact that I came out of a section, the gang intelligence section in the jail, where I worked specifically investigating gang members locked up, understanding their tattoos, understanding their culture. So when I went out to the streets, the amount of knowledge I was able to just have in my back pocket, then I was able to share with my squad, just made us that much better. So I'm just tossing up different things that could help us understand things a little differently. So much criticism of cops comes from people who have never had experience in the field. I agree. I totally agree. I'm security for church. I've been security for camp. So I have a little bit more insight than others. And that does help because you deal with people to some degree who are at times uncooperative, or you may even come in contact with people who have some mental illnesses. You never know. So it does put you in the position where you can kind of understand things a little better. It's really funny. It reminds me of a story. One of my brothers, my oldest brother, he and I have went back and forth over the years about law enforcement officers, and he's been very critical of the tactics that cops use. Now, he has zero law enforcement background, but he was very critical of the police. And we used to debate when I worked in the jail. But when I went out to the streets, I learned so much more in regard to situations on the streets. And then he started working a security job. And it was here in Vegas at Sunrise Hospital, which is kind of and it's not in the greatest part of town necessarily. It's not in the worst, but it's not in the greatest. Just across the street, just kind of southwest of that is an area that used to be, that I think it still is, I'm not sure, known as Crack Alley, Sierra Vista and Cambridge. For those of y'all who have worked Vegas police, Metro Police, it used to be, it still is, if I'm not mistaken, unless the sector beats have changed. It was South Central Area Command, and that was one of the hottest spots in the Vegas Valley. So he worked right across, a walking distance across the street from the Sierra Vista apartments, if I recall the name. And so so the fact that he worked over there, worked security at Sunrise Hospital right across the street, he dealt with a lot of people who were gang members, a lot of drug addicts, a lot of mentally ill folks coming over there, just kind of wandering over there and getting caught up in the mix, threatening him with violence, coming into the ER, wanting to shoot people up because their homies got shot or their family members. And I remember hearing them complain about it. I just said, brother, welcome to my world. I think experience goes a long way and it should not be ignored. And unfortunately, the reality is, and I will concede this with anyone who I may be disagreeing with overall on this topic, that yeah, there are a lot of people out there who love to critique the cops, love to critique law enforcement, and who are very ignorant on the topic. And I think that there should be some balance. Yeah, you can't critique them on everything, but I think it's good to be able to ask a question. Like, why did they do that? That doesn't make sense to me. But yeah, that's typically not what we're hearing these days. Good one, Kenneth. Appreciate that. I feel people default to emotion in topics they're unfamiliar. Agreed. In many cases, absolutely. When it comes to chaotic situations in law enforcement, I imagine defaulting to emotional overlooks important context. I totally agree. There's nothing to dispute or debate with on that. 100%. Sadly, we are living in a culture where that is the norm. People aren't taught how to think. People are taught what to think. They're not taught how to think. And if you ever go any deeper than that, or I can't say deeper, it's more shallow. Emotions rule. That's where we are today. If something feels right, then do it. And who are you to tell anybody that they're wrong? That's what happens when we get into these worldviews that are relativistic, meaning moral relativism. What's good for you is good for you. It may not be right for me, but it's good. And morality is subjective. You can do what you want to do, and you're not in a position to critique me or tell me what I'm doing wrong. Sadly, that's where we are. But and it was something that was in our colleges kind of on the down low for decades, but now it is being taught everywhere. Emotions rule the world, here, especially here in the West. And it only seems to be getting worse. So I'm in agreement with you right there. What's up, brother? Lon, it's been a while, man. We got to catch up, man, for real. So I need to shoot you a message, man. We gotta figure something out, figure out a way to catch up, man. It's been too long. At ER for 4 hours last night, telling them what was wrong. Did nothing to verify and cut me loose. Didn't want to hear what I had to say. Wow. I'm sorry to hear that, bro. But that kind of goes along with the what doctors sometimes, and I've had nurses tell me this, and my medical background goes, when I was in the Army, I was a combat medic. I did the majority of my time working in the Army hospital in El Paso, Texas, at William Beaumont Army Medical Center. Shout out to my 91 Alphas, 91 Bravos, even the 91 Charlies out there. Shout out to y'all. That's a medical term, different medical jobs when back in the day. I think they changed the classification. But my experience when it comes to law enforcement, or excuse me, when it comes to the medical field, was from a few years working in the hospital. When I was deployed to Desert Storm. I was a medic over there, and we were attached to an air cavalry unit, helicopter unit, primarily Cobra helicopters, Black Hawks, so on and so forth. And these guys, and I worked with doctors, I worked with physician's assistants on a daily basis. And I was blessed to have a really good doctor work with me. When I worked at the hospital, though, you had some of your officers, and some of them walked around like their stuff didn't stink, like they could not do wrong. I think when some people, I don't want to make any general statements here. I want to do the best I can not to do that. I think when some people get put in a position where they have a lot of authority or a lot of power, and they are revered to a large degree, doctors, cops, I think that there could be some semblance of a God complex that can develop, where they feel as if they cannot do anything wrong, and how dare you question me? That's the perspective on some. Now, I know that's not the majority, but it can easily arise, and it can easily go there. And so if you're Lon, I feel you, man, when you're saying, hey, I'm feeling crappy, this is what's wrong with me right now. And they're like, well, the tests come back, even though those tests are pretty limited, they don't test everything. Well, the tests come back negative, so there must not be anything wrong. So if you start feeling bad, come back tomorrow or whatever. People don't necessarily, they want to discount your personal experience when it comes to your own body at times over in relation to their own so-called, well, I don't want to say so-called because they may be experts, but if you are feeling a certain way, there's got to be a reason for that. And a lot of times some doctors think that they know better than the patient does. And that's a tremendous mistake. I got a little long-winded on that one, so excuse me. That's right, bro. No absolutes, man. Very good. I want to make sure I'm not missing anybody here. Okay, here we go, Kenneth. I've had conversations with one of our members who was very emotional about last year's BLM protests, and I gave him a rational understanding as to why the officers did what they did. Hey, good for you, man. Kenneth, what was their response, if you can recall? Did they receive the information that you gave them well, or did they just discount it? And if they did, was it based on emotion, or did they try to give you a rational argument or response back? Sadly, I find that because I know there are a lot of folks out there, in particularly white folks today, who feel as if their hands are tied. They want to speak out and speak up and talk about some of these issues when it comes to use of force and how everything is viewed through a lens of black and white, but they feel as if they can be harmed physically. I mean, and that's a rare occasion, but they feel as if they may lose friends. They feel as if they may face some repercussions on their job. So I know it's got to be a tough spot to be in. It's a tough spot for me to be in as a black man with my views. I lean far more conservative than I do anything else, primarily based on my Christian faith. And I think that's consistent with what scripture says. But I know that there are people out there who want to speak up, but they don't want to be in a firefight every single day dealing with these issues. And I've had people ask me, Eric, what do I do? How do I deal with this? What do I say? And I tell them, and my honest opinion, you have to pick your battles. You can't fight. Every fight isn't a hill worth dying on. But I think that there's some. And I think that there are plenty that are worth it. There are plenty that are worth you possibly risking certain opportunities to be able to proclaim truth, to not live a lie. I mean, I can go on and on, but I know that's a whole different topic right there. Maybe I'll make that part of the discussion in upcoming weeks. I do want to do one that addresses more of the BLM factors when it comes to, or the issues that they try to bring up. I do want to do one that addresses some of their claims specifically more, so we can have a free flowing dialogue. But I appreciate that, man. Socrates believed guardians of society should be somewhat unpredictable in order to be effective, including potentials for evil. If criminals can predict officers' behavior, that's unfavorable. Socrates believed guardians, I'm going to read that again, should be somewhat unpredictable in order to be effective. Okay. I don't think anything's wrong with that, but at the same time, the laws by which an officer is bound to are public. They're public knowledge. All someone has to do is look up what they can do. And Socrates lived in a different time. He didn't live in a constitutional republic or like we do today. So I get what he's saying. I think that no one should have every tactic out there, should know every single tactic that an officer uses, especially operational, especially if you're dealing with a search warrant or hostage rescue or something along those lines. I totally agree. But on the other side of that, when it comes to what officers are able to do, all that stuff is public knowledge. Anyway, good one though, bro. He said he understood what I was saying, but still didn't like it. He literally said the absolute facts weren't that important to him. He's black, I'm white. And that's really unfortunate. That's really unfortunate. The absolute facts are unimportant. And that's partly why when I do my presentation, I have a presentation, and it's on my YouTube channel if you guys hadn't seen it. It's called, the primary topic is police brutality, separating facts from fiction. It's an extended video, but I think it's well worth your time watching because I go into a lot of the details in the area of the allegations and the claims of what the media says, what the politicians try to say, what the mainstream in general believe, because they've had certain things repeated to them over and over again. I go into detail as to what is being said and what is true. And sadly, we're living in a time where truth is almost irrelevant to a lot of people. People really don't care. They have their minds made up. So there's almost nothing you can do to convince them otherwise. But I think that should let us know that what we're dealing with. Some people are just irrational. Some people are solely in it because, from an emotional perspective. They're emotionally invested and they do not want to listen to reason. When I have, for example, when I have someone tell me that the police killings of black men are an epidemic, in particularly unarmed black men is an epidemic. And then when I give them the numbers, in the last 2 years, the police make an estimate. I've seen the number anywhere from 100 million to 375 million contacts every single year with the general public. And over the last 2 years, the police killed approximately 30 unarmed black men. And once again, I'm not trying to make light of that. But how are you going to tell me, how is anyone going to tell me that out of hundreds of millions of contacts, approximately 30 unarmed black men were shot by the police? And once again, unarmed does not mean that you are not dangerous. I say it over and over again because I want that to settle in people's minds. Just a couple of weeks ago here in Vegas, some dude got punched in the face, fell down, hit his head and died. Every year, 1,000 people or more die where there's no weapon involved. But I always try to say, if you honestly believe that out of hundreds of millions of police contacts where 30 or so unarmed black men were shot by the police. How is that considered an epidemic? If we go by the sheer definition of the word epidemic, and as a matter of fact, let me pull that up. Do a little Chrome here. Do a little dictionary search here, just to get our terms right. Excuse me. Got my face all up here. Epidemic. I know I'm using Merriam-Webster, so some of these online dictionaries may not be the greatest, but here we go. Make sure y'all can see that. Shrink my head down a bit. All right, let me remove Kenneth's comment. Thanks again for that, bro. Epidemic, affecting or tending to affect a disproportionately large number of individuals within a population, community, or region at the same time. Excessively prevalent. Excessively prevalent. Let me read that definition one more time. Affecting or tending to affect a disproportionately large number of individuals within a population, community, or region. Now, if you want to be consistent, don't use 30 with in relation to the unarmed shooting of black men. It's just not so. So, like I said, man, the sad reality is that some people just aren't willing to listen to reason, and that's just something we have to deal with, sadly. Okay, let me see here. All right. I know we're getting a little off topic, but man, this one here is really good. I really want to talk about this one more time, and then we're going to get back to the main topic. The context of what, let me get rid of this here, right? Get my screen share. The context of what we were talking about was whether or not Breonna Taylor was shot sleeping in her bed. Why was Jacob Blake at the house? Yeah, that's definitely understandable. Now, I'm definitely not going to get all into those two topics. I haven't really addressed the Breonna Taylor case or situation, but I definitely addressed Jacob Blake on more than one occasion. So if anybody wants to check that out, you can check out my YouTube channel. I have a more recent one I put up just a few weeks ago, and it was more of an update on Jacob Blake based on what he said, his own self-admission. So go check out Code Red Conversations, my YouTube channel, and I have a picture of Jacob Blake. I think he said what, or he admitted what. I think that was a caption, and watch that video. But anyway, let me hear. Let me see. We got there, line. My mind's made up. Don't confuse me with that. Sadly true, bro. There's a lot of people like that. And unfortunately, it's on all sides. There are people like that. People like that on all sides of the equation, regardless of political party. Now, I believe that one side might be more prevalent because they're actually taught that in, like, nowadays in school, on TV, on the news, Hollywood, and music, you name it. They're taught that as largely. As a citizen, I imagine officers have a right to use high levels of force solely for the reason of being in a dangerous profession. I think it is something that is overlooked by the average citizen. As a citizen, I imagine officers have a right to use higher levels of force solely for the reasons of, just for clarity's sake, I would say that they do, but it depends on the situation. It depends on the situation. And there's so many factors that are involved. Factors such as the availability and opportunity that the suspect has to inflict harm, whether the suspect is in possession of a weapon. What kind of a weapon is it? What's the distance between the suspect and the officer? What are the physical abilities of that suspect? What are the physical abilities of that officer? Size, height, weight. There's so many factors that play a role in the decision-making that officers that officers can in the decision making that they have or that they use, and when and how and what types of force that they can use. I hope that makes sense. Tons of factors that are involved. And so when it comes to a use of force, what's going on at that moment matters. The weather condition can play a factor, can play a role. The time of day can play a role. The lighting can play a role. So that's another reason why I created Code Red, was because I know that there are people out there who aspire to be law enforcement officers. There are people out there who want to be cops. And I want to give them just a little bit. If you see this stuff consistently, and then you may learn a little tactic here, a little tactic there that can help you down the road as you go about doing your thing. You may be in a position where you could be on a call, and the fact that I just made a video and I referenced and I'm sure you'll hear this in field training. So it's not like and in the academy. So it's not like I'm telling you anything that's rocket science in regarding police work, but just the fact that you might have had that in the back of your head early on, and it could just be stuck there, and it could help you make a better decision when you're approaching a vehicle, or even during the testing process of being a police officer in the academy, in field training, once again in the oral board. You may have more of a mindset of what it's like to be an officer. Because nowadays, I think that there's some that don't want solid, conservative-minded, rational-thinking police officers out there. That's why you see all this defunding the police that took place all over the country. But now they're trying to backtrack because they realize how idiotic it was, which they should have figured out from the beginning, from jump. But that's neither here nor there right now. But now you have people, you look at some of the new standards that they're coming up with in order to hire on new officers. It almost looks as if, and I'm saying this kind of sarcastically, as if they wanted to get rid of a certain crop of officers to bring in some people that might be a little bit more passive, shall we say, a little bit more compliant to some of these woke social justice warrior type politicians who don't really have the average everyday citizen's best interest in mind. It just puts us in a very bad spot as citizens. If you live in some of these cities, like your Portlands and your Minneapolises and places like that, man, I really feel for y'all. But and if you voted for some of these knucklehead politicians, it's sad, but you kind of got what you had coming, to be honest with you. But before I wrap it up here, in the area of I had a list down of things I wanted to talk about on this topic of police use of force, but I don't know what I did with it, so forgive me for that. Or in the topic of critiquing cops. But I would say that when it comes down to, I would say overall, if the critique is done in good faith and not simply to make fun, or not simply just to say, oh, that dude doesn't know what he's doing. If that's all you're doing, then you're not helping anyone. But if you're critiquing because, one, you understand that the average citizen isn't ignorant completely. They may not understand every aspect of a police use of force, but a lot of times people can see bad tactics. If you have any type of military background, you might be able to see and identify a bad tactic. The incident that took place in Nashville with the overweight cop and that one Nika, I can't remember, Holbert, I think it was, can't recall right off the top of my head. There were a lot of areas that he screwed up on. I'm just going to call it for what it is. And I think that there are times where us being honest as law enforcement or former law enforcement and just calling it what it is. And hopefully that next officer, that aspiring officer, that 16, 17, 18, 20-year-old kid who wants to be a cop, he's sitting back watching these videos because he's like, man, I'm really interested in how all this stuff goes down and why cops do what they do. If he sits back and he watches it and he's that much wiser. He's just a little bit wiser going into the academy. I think that's a good thing. I think that's a good thing. I think that's some place that we need to seek out to be. And man, I'm telling you, I have, like I said, I got over 20 years of law enforcement. I'm not in the game anymore. I did my time. I got out. Sound like an inmate over here. I did my time and I got out. And man, I appreciate I appreciate my time. I appreciate what I was able to do. It was a definite blessing. I loved it. Didn't love every minute of it, but I loved it. And I have a lot of knowledge in my head. So for me to sit back and not share that with anyone on all sides of the equation, I think it's doing our public a disservice. I think people need to understand these things, especially coming from me in this culture as a black man. Yeah, they can call me sellout and all this kind of Uncle Tom and House N-word, all this kind of stuff. They can say all that kind of stuff, whatever. It is what it is. I understand that's going to come. But the big picture is, man, I learned a lot. I went to a lot of schools. I went through a lot of training. And man, some training was just not fun at all. But if I can pass that on to some young man, young woman who wants to be a cop, and they can take something from that and change their ways, just like on the other side, if I can convince one young person or even older person that the narrative that they're being fed about cops just being evil and just trying to gun down folks, in particularly black folks, and how not complying is foolish as you can get, being non-compliant, and how dangerous that is. If I can convince just a handful of people of those facts, then I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, because people need to know these things. Real quick, the loudest critique cannot always be assumed as good faith. Good faith critique is likely to be muted by the noise. Hey, it is what it is, but I'm gonna keep doing it. There's gonna be somebody out there listening to me. My audience is growing. It ain't growing super fast, but by the grace of God, my audience is growing. There are people out there who are listening to me. There are people out there who are sharing my content, and I thank all of y'all. I appreciate every one of y'all who subscribe and follow my channel and comment on these videos, because all that, your comments, your shares, all that helps me fight against the noise, fights against the social media overlords, as I like to say, the people in charge who may not like the idea of some of the things that I talk about. The fact that I'm positive on the police mostly, and that I help people understand that not every shooting was a bad shooting. I've dealt with some of my videos being taken down and people complaining about them because it shows it's violent or whatever. But they're very informative videos, but I deal with that. So the more you guys repost, reshare, or share my videos, or repost my videos, or comment, it helps us get over the noise. And I say us, man, because I can't do this alone. I cannot do this alone. I need y'all. I need the support from every one of y'all, and I appreciate it so very, very much. Let me tell y'all something. I used to like laugh and chuckle when I knew somebody was a YouTuber. Man, this is hard work. Let me tell y'all that right now. Gathering information for a video, figuring out a proper title that's going to get people's attention, which is a marketing thing, the proper tags, thumbnails where the little image, and that's why I usually have like some goofy look on my face and I'm doing something. All those things matter. And I put something, and I have like flashy colors. That's all marketing. That's trying to get eyes on. I'm trying to set myself above the probably hundreds of thousands of other people who have commented on a similar topic. Could be a similar shooting. How can I get people to click on mine as opposed to that next guy? So figuring all that kind of stuff out, the content, what I'm going to talk about, doing the research, coming up, finding the stats and the statistics and the figures, editing a video, putting it together, uploading it, sharing it on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, my personal YouTube, Facebook page, my Facebook business page, man, that is some hard work. So y'all show these. If you know, if there's anybody in your life that is a content creator on social media, show them a little love, would you? Because it ain't easy. Let me tell you, it is hard work, very time consuming, very tedious, but I love what I do. And I think it's definitely worth it. When I put out a video and it gets a little traction, feels good. It feels good. And but once again, I cannot do it without you guys. So I appreciate all y'all out there who are supporting me. If anybody right now is watching this video and you appreciate channels that help you break down a police use of force, help break down a shooting, and is going to be open and honest enough to critique both sides, make sure if you're not on YouTube, if you're not watching this on YouTube, go to YouTube, give me a subscribe and follow. And I guarantee you that the content I put up, it'll be helpful. It'll be beneficial to you. And you'll walk away with an education, because I don't take it lightly what I put out, because I understand that there may be dozens, maybe hundreds, there may be thousands of people that watch my videos. And I don't want to be, and in the midst of, and in a time where lies are overflowing, I don't want to be a part of that. I want to be a guy who's bringing truth. Some of these last comments here, and I'll get out of y'all's hair. I hope that your channel continues to grow and grow big. Thank you, Redskin. I would love to know your real name, by the way. I appreciate that. People need the truth. You help us to understand just how tough it is to make a split-second decision. Thank you. That's what I try to do. Thank you very much. I like that you open it up to public comments. That's inviting. Thanks, bro. I'm saying bro. I don't even know if you're a bro or not. So forgive me if I was off. But that's what I wanted. I think everyone that commented, I allowed them to have a voice. And I wanted this dialogue because I don't profess to Billy Deese, Redskin. Shout out to you. Shout out to you, brother. I appreciate it. But I don't profess to know everything. And there were a lot of things that you guys said that I totally agree with. Yeah, I definitely don't profess to know everything. If anyone who knows me, they'll know that I'm pretty transparent dude. I'm a little closed until I get to know you. But when it comes down to forums like this, I don't mind admitting that I don't know, that I could be wrong. And there could be some information down the road that comes out and I may change my tune. I don't know. I don't see that. I'm 51 years old. I don't see myself changing too much, but I love hearing your guys's, I love hearing y'all's perspective. I love hearing y'all's perspective. And I wanted it. I really wanted that today. Do me a favor, over the course of the next couple of weeks, use one of my videos and let me know. Just comment on any one of my videos. If you follow me on Facebook or Instagram or YouTube, wherever, let me know if there are particular topics that you would like to go over. I actually have a friend of mine who was involved in probably one of the most controversial shootings in Las Vegas. And it was some years ago. I can't remember how many years ago. And he wants to come on here and give his side of the story. And of course, I want to make sure that there's no legal ramifications or legal issues there. But he wants to come on and he wants to give his side of the story. And I'm hoping to have him on in the next couple of weeks. But if there's any particular topic that you would like for me to discuss, then hit it up. Then throw it in the comments here or in any one of my other YouTube videos or any place on social media where you follow me. And I'll and if it's good, I'll jump on it because I really want this to be very interactive, very interactive. All right. Okay, Struggle. Appreciate it, man. We're living in crazy times. Thanks for what you do and stay strong. Sailor, I appreciate that. There's some days where it can be a little dragging when you're dealing with negative comments left and right, but I've mentioned this before. I don't know if I mentioned it to y'all who are watching and listening, but I have a Y board, WHY board in my office or in the kitchen area where I do my morning work. And on it, it has a picture of all the reasons why I do what I do. So if I ever get discouraged because I'm tired of the negativity, I'm tired of all the name calling and all this kind of stuff, I remember that what I'm doing this for. I'm doing it for my family first and foremost. I'm doing it for the profession that I loved and that I still love. I have brothers and sisters out there in law enforcement who are out there trying to police righteously. I'm doing this for the average everyday citizen who just has questions, who just doesn't understand why cops do some of the things that they do, and they really want answers. I'm doing it for the young man or woman out there who's fearful of the cops because they've been told that they should be afraid. And I want them to know that they shouldn't be afraid, that the vast majority of cops are out there just trying to do their job. And I'm doing it for the everyday citizen. I'm doing it for the bad cop. So maybe the few bad cops that there are, maybe they'll see one of these videos and be like, I need to get my crap together, get my act together. So those are my motivations. Those are my daily motivations, y'all. Once again, I appreciate y'all. I love y'all. Thank you for stopping by and following me. Before you go, make sure you follow me on Instagram, Code Red Conversations, definitely on YouTube, Facebook. Follow me anywhere Code Red Conversations is. Interact with me, y'all. I really, really need that. I appreciate y'all. If there are any topics, again, before I go, that you want me to cover, make sure you comment on any one of my social media pages. In the meantime, y'all know the routine. Stay safe, God bless, and make sure you join the conversation. Have a good weekend.